If someone told you you could do it all by yourself, they lied. It truly takes a village. Dear brother, dear sister, dear parent. In a Swahili dialect, it is mentioned, Umwana taba wumoi. Don't kill me if I said that incorrectly, but it translates as a child belongs not to one parent or to only one home. Welcome to the Confrontational Podcast, Ep.4. I am your host, Imam Muhammad. Today I'm here with a very close and dear friend for many years, Eric. How are you today?
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it, man.
No, we definitely love to have you here, and thank you for your presence. How do we meet?
Say 70s, PS 76. And we go further back, we'll say the Dime Block, man. 41st side of 10th Street.
41st side of 10th Street. So let me ask you, who was the principal in 76? Do you remember?
Mr. Zimmerman.
Jeez. Mr. Zimmerman. I actually bumped into him in Midtown Manhattan once. I mean, I think he's deceased.
Yeah, I think he's passed now. Yeah, definitely.
But before he passed away, I bumped into him in like 59th Street or something like that. I looked up and he was like right there walking, which was crazy. But yeah, definitely. I think third grade. That's when I moved to Queensbridge, and we was in third grade together. I think we was in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and even sixth grade together.
Yeah, we're talking about 88.
That's crazy, 89.
Right? We're talking about 88,
go back.
89. Literally, go way back, brother.
I think even in 204 we was in some classes together.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah,
Oliver Wendell.
Oliver Wendell Holmes. Sheesh. Cookie closet.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you, were you...
Telling your age now.
Yeah, definitely. Were you part of the team of the people who had the fraudulent, what do you call the home bucks?
You know what? It's funny you say that.
You were. You sound
I
like
think, yeah. Oh, wow. I haven't thought about that in a very long time.
Okay, so just so that the audience can understand what happens is Oliver Wendell Holmes, our junior high school, had these coupons that they would give out to the good students. And
we made copies. We made copies
of the home bucks, what they would call, to actually be able to shop at the snack office or the snacks box that they have for the during lunchtime. And so we was coming in literally selling them to other students, by the 10s and 20s, and it was crazy.
And I mean, the statute of limitations over now. I think it was me and Ralph at that time.
you definitely you and Ralph. I think you guys might have put me on. But we had all the cookies in the cookie closet. So so how you been?
I've been well, man. I've been well. Can't complain at all, man. Life is good. Got through this tumultuous time. I was glad to be present here, and really no complaints at all.
Definitely. Everything's well with the family?
Yes, thus far. Just a recent death of my daughter's grandmother, Angela Oxley, and she passed this last Sunday.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Condolences to the family.
Appreciate that.
Was it due to complications or COVID?
It was COVID and also lupus as well.
Okay.
My daughter always participated in the lupus walks, and it was just extremely sudden.
Yeah.
This is a woman that took care of herself. Just like definitely on top of her health, and it totally just sideswiped us.
Yeah, so sorry to hear that. What's crazy? What made me think about as soon as you said that, made me think to ask: was she on lupus medication?
She was, and to my what was expressed to us was that it was the medication kind of suppressed the vaccine because she was also vaccinated as well.
Wow.
So that. And the thing is, this is obviously the vaccine is new. This is not the campaign also not to take the vaccine, obviously. This is something totally different. But, that was something that you could not know of because of the rollout as well. And being effective was so new.
Yeah. The reason I asked the question is because I remember at a time they were saying that the people who were taking lupus medication had protection against COVID.
That's what we were given that same information. So we're still all in so much shocked behind the behind this this ordeal. So
so sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
So for those who are listening, first and foremost, make sure to like, comment, and share the broadcast, the YouTube. You can find us at the Confrontational Podcast. Facebook, you can find us at the Confrontational Podcast. Instagram, you can find us at the Confrontational Podcast. And we make sure to tap in and send your questions and your concerns, your suggestions to the email account at theconfrontational4 at Gmail. So, Eric, inform the audience on your career choice and your career situation at this point.
Well, I made a crazy career choice. I decided to join an organization called the New York City Police Department at the age of 22 years old.
Okay.
And it was funny because
let me ask you, is that even something that was like kind of like popular for people from where we came from?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This was not. I have not really come across anybody within our neighborhood that was a cop. I mean, not until later on. There was a brother named Larry Edwards.
Okay.
I'll talk about him in a second. That helped me along. But at that time, no, I did not at all. I was going to John Jay for forensic science at the time. I was working overnight at AOL Time Warner Cable, 10 at night to 7 in the morning. There was a brother named John who was a correction officer. He had 2 cars, 2 houses. And I liked the way he carried himself. And he said, Eric, the NYPD, I think 9/11 just happened. This is back in 2003. 9/11 just happened. He says, listen, why don't you take the exam? And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I'm not trying to get shot. And he goes, listen, man, it's a major window right now. They're practically taking anybody at this point. He's like, if you've never been in trouble, you don't have a speckled past. He says, listen, man, why don't you give it a shot? That night I went to work. I took a good look at my surroundings. And I knew I wanted something better for myself. I just didn't know where I wanted to go.
Got it.
And I wound up signing for the test. And that January 2004, man, I was swearing in.
Wow. So, when you grow up in the area where we grew up at, we have a lot of negative and sometimes positive influences. Would you say that this brother influenced you to become a cop, or was it something that you said, you know what, why not?
You know what? He was definitely part of the influence. I love the way he lived. He seemed like he lived carefree. He was actually in his 18th year at that time. He was coming back to school because he wanted a federal job and he needed to get a 4-year degree. And he was on his way out the door. And he looked fairly young. This guy was under 50 years old. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then also I went to John Jay, criminal justice. It's like the top 10 school in the country, for criminal justice. It's highly notable. So you're around that type of ethos. You're going to pick something up. I wanted to do forensics at the time. I didn't think that was going to fast track me into a career in law enforcement in that particular manner at all.
Definitely. So, did you have any reservations?
Some. You know what? Fairly young at the time. My core friends, most of my core friends did some form of jail time. Not they were bad guys, just products of the environment. My belief systems as well was conflicted. I didn't grow up liking the cops. Not that I had many interactions with them, but this was just something that was almost like systemic. You just didn't like the cops where we were from because of X, Y, and Z, of what you've seen, or maybe what you experienced. I've been stopped, questioned, and frisked before as well. But
1 second, were you stopped and frisked after becoming a police officer, or like prior?
Oh no, prior to that.
Prior to that. And what age were you at the first time you think you had your first encounter?
I probably was like a good 16, 17. Actually, I remember it. I was waiting for my girlfriend at the 21st Street train station. She was coming home from work from Manhattan.
Got it.
And me and another brother, obviously, fit the description at the time. This is back in the 90s.
Yeah, we always fit the description.
This is back in the 90s. You just said you just knew you wanted to survive the encounter.
Definitely.
But that was pretty much it. I wasn't really out there like that. I had friends that were, but I wasn't out there like that. I always worked, did my thing.
Yeah.
But if you're in a neighborhood, you are an associate of some form of fashion. You don't have to be in the gang, but you know the gang.
By default, yeah.
By default, definitely.
And I think even, a lot of people who are getting caught up with some troubles today don't understand that you are could possibly be automatically thrown into the RICO Act by way of association. And it could have just been a person that you grew up with your whole life, and he's into the streets, he's in a gang, and unfortunately, you're, you know, if anything ever happens to him and you're picked up, you could be selling drugs and he could be in a full-fledged gang, and he may be selling drugs as well, and it may be no gang affiliation, but when it goes to the feds, when it goes to the courts, it's going to be looked at as gang affiliation because of, you know, who you're affiliating with. So let me ask you, those reservations, were those reservations based off of a hatred between both sides, or was it between, is it like, is there a problem basically with the police and the black community, or the black community with the police? Like, how does that, yeah.
You know, I think there's always been an issue, you know, with the black community and the police. But also, as I got older, what I also realized that it's much more of a class issue, because you have certain neighborhoods where black folk live at, and they don't have that type of problem. And usually those particular type of neighborhoods are upper middle class, where, you know, it's a different type of interaction. But when you're growing up in low income, where, you know, there's rampant drugs, rampant crime and violence, even the good ones get thrown into the bowl of soup. You know, I was a housing cop, so I covered Marcy, Sumner, Tompkins, Lafayette Gardens, Louis Armstrong, etc. I used to work the day tour sometimes. I used to see the people going to work, and then they'll come home from work. Those were the good people. And there's more of them in housing than anything.
You said they would go to work and wouldn't come home?
No, go to work and come back home, and that you'll never see them outside.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the regulars that are outside doing their thing. And I think what gets misconstrued is that housing in general gets this overlook that everybody that lives there is under the same umbrella, but most people just don't have the financial means of getting out. So therefore they're stuck there. So it's when you're dealing with low income, it's pretty much a symptom of crime, and that's when you have the drugs. That's when you have the violence, etc.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned about the class. It being more of a class thing over a race thing is because I gave a lecture on racism some years ago, and I had mentioned in that lecture that I personally believe that class has to be part of the definition of race.
Definitely. And
I think that what happens is it like all of the protests and advocacy for police reform, or even racial systematic racism and reversal of systematic racism, is that when they leave out classism, it diminishes from the authenticity or the importance of the argument, because it's easy for a black person to say, oh, they're doing this because I'm black. And someone who's a non-black person will say, no, they're doing it because of where you live. And you can clearly see that. So the argument becomes stronger when we put it in its proper context. And when you remove classism or class, you know, the class of where the person, you know, the zip code or the school district, or when you remove that, what happens is, okay, yeah, you got the argument wrong.
Yeah, I'm with Dr. Clay Anderson written a book called Powernomics.
Yes.
And he basically says, listen, they hate you because you're black, but they victimize you because you're poor. And when you think of it that way, basically, and it was not to say that any rich black person is totally off the grid as far as experiencing some form of racism. We're not saying that at all. We can make classic examples on those type of scenarios. Yeah. But the idea of if you're economically strong, then you're able to navigate around those particular type of issues. There's a reason why there's certain demographics that don't have those particular type of issues, because in their neighborhoods they're economically strong. They control their neighborhoods.
And they're minorities as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, they have storefronts, they have businesses. So what does that translate to? They're able to do what? Pay politicians, put money back their particular candidates to who they want. It's a major difference. We're seeing that now with this New York City mayoral race right now. Exactly where the money's going and who they're backing and why these people are in these yes. particular type of positions.
Definitely. So you would agree that there is a strife or problem, issues of concern between the black community and the police. And so, how if there's that issue, how do we rectify that? In your opinion?
I think we have to get control of the economics, and also it's not just not overall black. It's a segment of the black community, and literally crime is the symptom. Is literally the symptom of the problem. If there is no money, if there is no hope, you have nothing to wake up to look forward to, then what else are you going to do? You can't blame. I walked into people's homes who had no food in the refrigerator, dogs running throughout the house, feces on the floor. I mean, like, you can't expect for this 8-year-old to do homework and he's going to be nurtured, etc. Different people in and out the house, traffic, all types of nights. It's because there is no financial base. There's no sense of community.
So before I ask you the next question, was in that particular type of household setup, were the parents on drugs? Were the parents just working? Like how?
Oh no, this was a drug situation because this was a search warrant situation that I was involved in, and this is when I was in narcotics, and you get a front row seat to the show when you're doing that particular type of work, and what I realized is over time is that it's the lack of economics. I mean, you have cops who are going to feel the way they feel about you either way. Mm-hmm. That's just, you're talking about, a good majority of cops that do not come from within the inner city. Mm-hmm. Many of them are shell shocked, coming in, different type of language, different vernacular. Obviously, they don't know. I don't care how many training courses you have, stories that they've been told. Mm-hmm. Some of these people are second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation. It takes a special type of person to be able to step outside of that, which I have worked. I worked with white guys that was just extremely sharp, that knew that everybody in the neighborhood, spoke to everybody in the neighborhood, and particularly housing cops, who at that particular time, they walked the beat, they got to know the people. Yeah. And we walked away from that with NYPD the last 15 to 20 years when we stopped community policing, when everything became a number, hence the reason of the increase of stop, question, and frisk. Because everything became number driven, and we stopped speaking to people and treating people as humans, even though I'm from a regular, everyday, average folk. Yeah, and that's became a real big issue. And it also definitely divided the community at that point in time.
How long were you an officer?
I was a cop for 11 years, and I retired at the rank of detective.
Got it. Did you ever experience any what seemed to be any kind of actions or like racial response?
You know what? My trajectory was extremely different in some shape, form, but it wasn't to the point where it was like, I got to quit my job and leave type thing. And also, I think everybody's, trajectory is a little bit different. The NYPD is a corporation masking blue collar work. Mm-hmm. And also it's a microcosm of the world. So what you see in New York City is what you're going to see in there. It's not like it's not just like straight whole bunch of white guys and that's it. Like, no, it's East Indians, it's Asians. It's a big melting pot under that. And just like any other corporation, is who you know. It's who you know and what kind of skill set you have, and obviously those are going to get picked over others. I've seen that, but it wasn't to the point where it was so detrimental to where I'm like, I had a headache coming into work. And also the precinct that I worked in, my first precinct was PSA 3. There was a lot of brothers that worked there. Okay. I mean, so it's like they took you under the wing as well. Yeah. And also the busier the house that you work in, the more unified the house is. So I come from, we called it the University of Brooklyn North. It's busy there, man. I mean, so no one really has that type of time. Oh, I don't like you because you're some type of Negro. Yeah. Nah.
It seemed like you guys did a lot of more community policing as well.
Oh yeah, I worked with a lot of old school guys, and these guys knew the neighborhood. They knew the players. They knew the working class people. They knew it cold. Got it. And that was the major difference.
We're blessed with the presence of Brother Nate, who's also one of the Queensbridge originals. But let me ask you, is there a problem in your eyes, in your opinion? Is there a problem between the police and the black community?
I think it's a very big problem between the police and the black community.
Okay.
A very, very big problem that's, I wouldn't say is easy to correct, but it's not as hard as people assume it is.
Okay. What would you think the problem is based on?
I think the problem is based on assumption. I think the way that they're trained is to assume a lot of times, especially from the clothing a person wears, the way a person walks, who a person might hang around with, especially if it's a police that's always on that certain type of route or that certain type of block. When he get familiar with certain type of faces, he might just be familiar with the faces, but not the activity that face might be involved with. But being around the wrong faces, even though you might not be that face that's doing something wrong, just the assumption just leaves you as a suspect to whatever they choose for you to be a suspect of.
Brother Eric was mentioning prior to your arrival that community policing plays a detrimental role in why police the way they do, and it seems like you're saying the opposite. You're saying like the police is there all the time, that it's possible he's become accustomed to treating people a certain way or visualizing them a certain way, even if they're not part of the technically considered a criminal.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because I'm gonna speak from experience.
Okay.
My family, my brothers, done had bad reputations. You know what I'm saying? My uncle done had bad reputations. I got into a situation once they found out my last name, and he was like, "Oh, so you're related to him?" And they start connecting the dots, like, "Oh, so this is what you do. Like, this is your people. This is what you're around. This is what you do." No, that's not what I do. I got into a situation that's segregated from that, but you want to combine it and consolidate it and make me part of everything else, and that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? You can't sit there and assume because I sit next to Muhammad or I sit next to Eric and I'm automatically involved with what they do. It could be a high and by, but that first initial thought when they see that person's face around that initial person that they're actually watching, they automatically assume he's a part of that.
Which was something similar to what we were saying about affiliation.
We was just touching on that, and that's the thing. Affiliation is a big deal. You could be in the wrong house at the wrong time. Listen, I make no bones about it. I tell people all the time. I said, listen, I was extremely lucky. I said I was lucky. I said because out of 5 close friends of mine, I was the only one who never got locked up, never was arrested. But I was one car stop away. I was probably dipped off and went upstairs 5 minutes early. Whatever the case or reason, I was not there. But being associated, that's just what it is. I have a friend of mine that grew up in L.A. He said, listen, I lived in a Crip neighborhood. He says, I wasn't a Crip, but I was affiliated. Why? Because you're in the neighborhood. Exactly. So it goes back to also what I stated about as far as the type of community that you live in. If you live in low income, gang ridden, crime infested, you're put in this bowl of soup. When we know that that's not the case, then it's probably like 10 to 15% of the people that do live in the neighborhood that are doing whatever they want to do. Majority of people that are living in those type of neighborhoods don't have the financials to leave their neighborhood. Therefore, but they get grouped with everyone else, and that's the major issue.
My question is that the police dropping the ball, or is it human instincts? Because I know of a situation where someone close to me was actually recently shot because of the area that they hung out at. That area had some problems with some other people in a different area. The person who actually got shot is not affiliated with neither side, but because he hangs out in that area with people who are gang affiliated, he basically took a bullet for them.
So I say this, and you have to be very clear on this. If you're a working man, if your life is in a whole different direction, then maybe you have to reevaluate that. Listen, I come home, I say what's up to my brothers and sisters, I go visit my parents, and I leave. Why is that? I have a totally different type of lifestyle. I know too much to get caught up at this point in my life, and I'm be 40 years old. I know too much. I know what this thing can be. I work the cases. I know exactly how it looks. In that particular arena, those things are going to happen. It's just all you're doing is just playing a lotto ticket. So if you keep doing it, it's one thing if you're coming home like once in a while. We have Queensbridge Day. We have those type of festivities where everybody get together. You haven't seen somebody since like 88, 89, whatever the case may be. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're constantly putting yourself in harm's way, you're hanging around somebody that you know that they're doing the total opposite of you, you're putting yourself out there at that point in time. And you're an adult. Yeah. I mean, so it's not like someone's telling you, you just can't do it. I mean, there's a reason why there's certain street dudes that say, "No, I can't go. I have to move over there. I can't even be around it," because you get sucked in, or you may just get caught up standing around. How many times we hear of that? We hear of the person being shot that had nothing to do with the incident. I think about that brother who's the attorney that was out in Brooklyn celebrating Juve. He gets shot. He had nothing to do with it. Here's a guy that had a promising career. Yeah. It's just too many stories like that. So I mean, I think as men, particularly as black men, we have to understand that we have a certain dynamic that we have to adhere to. Growing up in these particular type of neighborhoods, when to move in, when to move out. My whole thing was you don't stay at the party to the end, because at the end what happens? A user gets shot up, right? Yeah. You got to leave when you're having a good time. You have to leave when you're having a good time. And if that means leaving at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning before it pops off, then so be it. We have to have the honest conversation about that growing up in these arenas. You can't say that it doesn't happen. No, it does happen.
It does.
And then the cops respond to that per se. So
I think what's important to understand is that people have to live according to reality, not according to expectations.
Exactly.
Our expectations that you can go, drink, smoke, get high, hang out as you wish, as you will, wherever you wish, wherever you will. But the reality is that people are getting killed. People are robbing people, right? Mm-hmm. People are being, ultimately injured and, and hurt in certain, like I said, certain arenas. So it's like if you have to avoid this or that to stay safe, then that's the course of life.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's the course of life. So let me ask you, what is street code?
Street code is basically the rules and regulations you live by in the street.
Who set them? Where do they all originate?
I mean, it originates like any other rules and regulations, just like law. It comes from landmark situations. Mm-hmm. So if a dude did something that was done, if a dude does something to a dude in the street, and you're in the street and you're affiliated with the negativity and you're doing the same thing back that's done to you, or you the one that did it, it's you got to keep that quiet and get it how you live, man.
So let me ask you: is street code being honest and your father, right? Although you have taken the career into law enforcement, you are from Queensbridge, right? So I think your spectrum of how you looked at these certain issues prior to becoming an officer is where I'm trying to tap into right now, right? Are these codes designed to be productive to society, or are these codes designed to protect criminology?
So I believe that it's designed. It's definitely designed to protect criminal behavior. Mm-hmm. But the thing is this though, is that there's certain standards. See, in Howard Beach, if you touch Susan and Leanne, and Vinny the butcher finds that out, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna come and knock on your door and tell their young man to step out who touched this young lady, and then they're gonna conduct business as such. Mm-hmm. My issue with the black community as a whole is that we don't have a system of reward and punishment. Dr. John Henry Clark spoke on this. Mm-hmm. So if the 2-year-old gets shot and everybody's wearing, and I worked in an era where everybody's rocking the Stop Snitching shirts, unjustly, because they didn't really understand what they were wearing. If the 2-year-old gets shot in the neighborhood, but we don't take care of it, Now what? That's an issue. I have a personal issue with that. If you're going to administer street justice, administer it appropriately. Whatever the case may be. You can't stop that. My issue is that we don't do enough of that. So now people that are often, who are not even part of the game, get caught up in the game, and yet no one does anything about it. And the only thing you can say is don't snitch. That's ass backwards to me. Because we're not taking care of business in the community as we should, as we're supposed to. I grew up in an era where dudes told you to go upstairs. We're about to get down. Go upstairs, E. That's the era that I come from. We don't talk like that's one. You can't even talk to young brothers now without some young brother jumping in your face. I think you and I spoke about this off camera. It's like, is it even worth even saying anything? Because you don't want to get out of character. We lost that sense of community where we actually took care of business in the community. So we're going to say stop snitching. Now, all right, that's fine. That's street stuff. If the dude's moving, he's out here moving and shaking, and he gets caught up, yep, that's part of the game. Cops are part of the game. It is what it is. But the 2-year-old or 3-year-old gets caught up in that, and you're not taking care of business, I have a major issue with that, man.
How do they receive justice?
I mean, it's either going to be legally, or it's going to be, or the streets are going to take care of it, one of the two.
Hammer or the slammer.
Yeah, but you don't see. But what I'm not seeing is the streets taking care of anything. And that's the issue, because I've worked those cases.
I think what happens is ultimately, whether I'm advocating for the streets to take the matters into their own hands or not, it causes the balance. And once the balance is offset, that's when it becomes problematic, because now, like you mentioned, children are being injured, women are being raped, elderly are being abused. So it's like, okay, well, like you said, you're telling me not to snitch, but who gives this mother's family,
the redemption? Yeah. It's like, so when we say these things, okay, fine. Just as defunding the police, fine, let's defund them. Who's taking care of business now? We don't have a system of reward and punishment. Who's taking care of business? And who's calling the cops? So we have to be very clear on that. See, they say these things, which is pushed by the liberal agenda. They say these things, but the people that are saying them don't live in your neighborhood. They go home. They're not worried about being shot, walking. They're not worried about being robbed. They're not worried about any of that stuff. So it's very easy for them to sit there and articulate this and to beat on this drum when they don't live in these particular type of neighborhoods. You try living in somewhere in the 7-5 in East New York, 8-1, Bed-Stuy, Bushwick, the old Fort Greene. I'm not talking about the new Fort Greene. The old Fort Greene.
Old Queensbridge.
Old Queensbridge. Ingersoll, Whitman Housing, etc. Farragut. Different world. It's different now, 20 plus years later. But you try going down in 88, 89. Major difference. You try and say defunding the police, and yet there's nothing to correct the condition. That's a problem. And so my whole thing is like, okay, if we're going to do that, if we're going to take those steps, then who's stepping up to protect? And what does that look like now?
I think, well, I'm not going to go too much into depth about on that particular topic, but I do believe that, I think for me, the title was the biggest problem with me. Defunding the police is problematic in itself, because it's not going to naturally be accepted. Just the phrase, it's not going to naturally be accepted. Whereas it could have said something different, where a person it would have been a lot more comfortable for the heart to say, okay, well, listen, okay, no problem, yeah, we can do that. But defund the police makes it seem like it's an attack on the police. And when I see the attack being on the police or the attack being on the community, it makes it seem like it makes it seem as if the need or the necessity to unify is not as prevalent. But it's very important for the community to have that kind of respect for the police, and definitely important for the police to have that kind of respect for the community. Let me ask another question.
Just real quick.
Sorry, yeah.
I just want to touch on that no snitching situation. A lot of people say that, but I ask a lot of people, who's your favorite character on Power? And 9 times out of 10, a person's favorite character on Power is Ghost. Now, Ghost done told, he done called the cops, he done backstabbed his friends, and all kind of things. So when you listen to certain people say certain things, but you sit there and watch who they worship or who they idolize, you can see that they really don't mean certain things. They just say it to fit in the way they at. Because if there's no snitching, and I'm sitting here saying it's cool snitching, I'm not going to fit in the way I'm at.
Definitely.
But you got people that saying no snitching, they get caught in a situation and end up snitching. Yeah. So it's just a phrase. You know what I'm saying? Not too many is living by that. It's just a phrase that sounds good. You know what I'm saying?
It's a colloquialism. You're absolutely right, brother. It is. It's definitely that.
You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those.
So let me ask you, so what is the meaning of a snitch, and what's the difference between a snitch and a rat?
Well, to me, there's no difference between a snitch and a rat, but the definition of a snitch is somebody that's involved in a situation, involved in the streets, and once the heat hit the fan, they're sitting there telling everything that happened. You know what I'm saying? Somebody asked me one time, they said, yo, listen, so you wouldn't snitch on somebody? If you didn't do something and somebody locks you up for something you didn't do, you wouldn't tell? No, I'm not telling. I'm not telling if I got caught, if I did it or if I didn't. And the reason is, if I did it, I know what I was involved in. If I didn't do it, I know you got to pick 12 and find me guilty. What's your chances of finding me guilty? Because there's only 3 types of people that go to trial. A person that's innocent, a person that ain't got nothing to lose, and a person that think they smarter than the system. Those are the only type of 3 people that go to trial. If I'm innocent, I'm believing in justice. You got to prove that. So I'm not going to say nothing. It's not my place. You know what I'm saying? That's up to that man up there. But if you're involved and me and you and us 3 make a collective idea and go through with it, and one of us get knocked off, and then you start talking about, yeah, he was with me and he was with me, that's snitching. I mean,
okay, because I have an idea of me personally. I believe, I think when it came to like the snitch, like 100%, like a person who's involved in a crime, and he basically says, it was him, right? But the rat, to me, is a little bit more demeaning. Because a rat is an individual, let's just say, they had nothing to do with the crime. They get arrested or stopped or whatever for something totally different. But in order for me to get out of this situation, I got to tell you whatever I know about a crime, something else that can get someone else in trouble. And I think ultimately, a rat has he has, to me, like less. He has less less loyalty. He's more involved in crime. He's into himself. This individual, it will do anything to get out of that situation, no matter who he throws under the bus, whether it's even true or false, right? So I think that's a little bit more problematic. But let me ask you as well.
I worked with confidential informants.
Got it.
I worked with them. I mean, they're part of the game. That's part of the game. I mean, what people don't realize is that if you're out here, if you're on one particular side. I was listening to something that Ice-T said the other day. He says, "Listen," he said, "I didn't come up hating the cops." And Ice-T put this out there. He said, "I was doing, doing licks and robbing banks, etc." He says, "But it was my job to make sure that I got away with it and evaded the cops." He said they were part of the game. People are going to tell for the smallest things. I've seen it. You tell a dude that he's not going to be able to go out and hang out this summer, it's over. You'll be surprised what cracks. It doesn't take much, man. Everybody's not hard, man. And everybody's not prison ready or built for that. And that's totally understandable. I mean, to see, the thing is, when you're talking about as far as with drugs are concerned, it takes snitching and being it takes on a whole different meaning. White collar crime, it's okay for you to say, "Hey, I got the stock tip from so and so and so, and this is what it is," and that's fine. And you know what? There's not gonna be no major retaliation because those guys are into money. It's a major thing. You talking about drugs and crime? That's a whole nother thing.
Is that because it only affects urban area or black people?
Because it's consolidated. It's only urban.
Got it.
But Wall Street, there's always someone doing something. I mean, you got 511 Pearl Street, which is the Southeastern District, federal where the trial of federal cases at. There's names always on paperwork there. I got the stock tip from this person but there's no repercussion because that person's not afraid to tell, and obviously, and it's okay, well, he got himself out of it. You've seen this recently with the Trump situation and everything else. Like, you can say what you want. You didn't hear white folks saying, well, he's a rat and he's in the third, because for them, that doesn't equate to it at all.
Mm. So is the whole snitch code? See, my thing is, like, no one. Maybe I could be incorrect, right? There's no book to learn street code from. There's no book to learn,
It is a book.
There's a book now?
That book is written in your mind as life goes along.
So that's the point I was trying to make, right? Yeah. Because I learned certain things from my mother, from my parents, right? Don't do this because that's not loyal. And I lived by that. I mean, I lived by it. It was like, okay, well, listen, I'm in a situation. I didn't even do it. I'm already about to go down for something else. I know who did it. We're both co-defendants. Listen, just throw it on me. I'm going down anyway, and you don't got no record. It's no problem. Get your life together. Straight up, fly right. So, and I've been in that situation, right? So I understood just how to be a loyal friend, and I think that's what the all boils down to, is that people are not loyal.
That's what. There's no loyalty in this game. There's no loyalty in the streets.
They said there's no loyalty. There's no loyalty.
That could be your man one day. You get knocked tomorrow. He'll be on your baby mother.
Yeah.
There's no loyalty, and you could tell there's no loyalty because a OG told me this one time. He said that for a dude to sit there and cheat on his wife, a person he loved, a person he cared for, a person that cared for him and everything else, if he'll do that to his wife, what you think he'll do to the next man? So you got to judge dudes based on how they treat the people around them that's closest to them. If a dude don't take care of his kid, how loyal do you think he really gonna be to you?
I mean, history shows that almost everybody snitches. That's what's crazy. This code is there. You could bring the Freeway, bring the John Gotti's, bring the Sammy the Bulls, Alpo, everybody tell. Or not everybody, because there's some thorough people out there that say, listen, I got myself into the situation, I'm a ride. But probably 90-something% of people don't.
I mean, if you read, like, I used to read books like, with Don Diva and what was the other one? Don Diva and Feds magazine. Yeah. I used to love reading stuff. I used to love reading because it's just for me. I always found it extremely interesting that people had to even, like, the balls even to do some of the stuff that they were doing. It takes a certain type of mindset for you to be able to mastermind an operation like that. And I always felt that these brothers are so brilliant that if they was to flip it legally, there'll be something like they'll be giants. So I always found it extremely fascinating because it takes a level of intestinal fortitude to be able to map things like that out and to execute and to be effective at it, man, and not to feel. Listen, people are gonna try to get out of a situation if they can. It's very, as you just noted, it's very, very few people, very few people that actually can sit here and say that they didn't say anything at all. And like I said, I've been across the table where you had some hardest the hardest, and quote unquote, it didn't turn out to be that way. So
let me ask you. I'm gonna give some scenarios, and then I want to see what the proper response would be. But before I ask that question, who is allowed to give a statement to the police? Either
that man that goes to work every day and is not involved in the streets. If they're not involved in the streets and it's something that's affecting their community, because people got to understand, everybody's not a gangster, everybody's not shooting, everybody's not selling drugs. So at the end of the day, you got some people out there that's actually scared. So when it comes to people, kids, and it comes to people, households, and bullets is going through their windows and things like that, and their kids are scared to go to school and things like that, those are the people that's not in the street that have a right to clean up their community. You know what I'm saying? But a dude that's out there doing the same thing and then turn around criticizing the things he did and then inform the police on them things, that's...
I could respect that. I like that. I like that. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple scenarios and see what's the appropriate thing to do if a person's in the street or out the street or, the likes. Walking down the street, a young man watches another individual flee the scene of a crime and what seems to have been a rape. There are no apparent witnesses but him. This person's in the street. He's involved in the street. He's the only witness. Later that evening, during an episode of the news, he sees a request from Crime Stoppers to help identify the suspect. He saw the suspect. He's hustling. He's a murderer. He's robbing people. Whatever he's doing. But he witnessed what seemed to have been a rape. Would it be considered snitching if he contacted the police?
In my mind, no. Because in my mind, it's certain levels of crimes. Not saying one crime is better than the other. A crime is a crime.
Crime is a crime.
But it's certain levels. Mm-hmm. If a person is out here and he's making a living off of people choosing to buy drugs from him, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if you out here raping females, there's no loyalty towards that. There's no common ground. You can't find common ground to a crime like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, would he be wrong for saying something? Probably deep down inside, he probably feel he would. But I don't see no loyalty towards people like that. Because people like that don't have loyalty to the game. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why be loyal to something that's not loyal to you?
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
I respect that. I respect that. Okay. A group of people hanging out purchased some drugs, which seem to have been laced with fentanyl. And you got to explain to me what's this fentanyl thing. I'm like thrown off of how fentanyl seems to be able to cut every drug in the world. It seems like, right? It's like, well, what is that? But
I tell you now, I don't know how people even like dabbling at this point. Man, people are dying, man. I mean, like,
definitely.
That's a different type of high.
Yes, okay, so as a result of, they're out hanging out, right? They purchased some drugs that's laced with fentanyl. As a result of taking the laced drugs, 2 of the friends died. Should the remaining friends inform the police from whom they purchased the drugs from, or is it considered snitching?
To me, that's considered snitching because you're involved in that activity. Mm-hmm. Now, the streets have no love. The streets is cold. So at the end of the day, if you think you're going to go out there and everything you pay for is going to be as is and as it should be, then you're wrong. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a victim to the game, you're a victim to the game. Mm. You're supposed to take that into account and let everybody else know, like, yo, listen, don't get nothing from him. Like, his weed is no good, whatever it is. Don't get nothing from him. You know what I'm saying? But to sit there and tell on him when you was coming to cop something from him, you can't, unless you're going to leave it in the street. I don't think going to the police is the way you handle something like that that's streetwise.
Yeah. Just don't use drugs.
Yeah, don't use drugs. Don't use drugs. Like, you can't.
That sounds so simple.
Because it's like, you can't expect a person to sit there and tell you, y'all got fentanyl in there. He's not going to tell you that.
Definitely.
He's going to let you find that out on your own. But if you don't indulge in that, you wouldn't have to worry about if it's fentanyl in it or not. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
It's called a dispensary. But anyway.
Yeah. That too.
Okay, scenario 3. A group of police officers enter a building where a number of teenagers are loitering, playing loud music, smoking marijuana. The police ask the group of young men to get against the wall, then proceed to frisk them. Heated words are exchanged between one of the youth and one of the officers. The officer cuffs the young man, tightening the cuffs extremely tight, and I hate that. I think I'm out of the game. That's just yeah. You know how I remember when Polo, actually, I'm putting his name out there. Polo did it with Polo. I'm telling everybody. Polo was we get arrested. Polo's bothering the cop. I'm like, yo, let's let this flow. We going to Spofford. It is what it is.
Survive the encounter.
Stop bothering this guy, right? And it was going back and forth. I'm like, oh my God, Polo. So you know what he did? He took us. We were sitting in the chairs. We all had one cuff on the cuffed, one hand cuffed to the wall. Mind you, I was always smart, right? So I had my hand wrapped up in an ace bandage. I took the ace bandages off. Could have walked out of 114th precinct, but I didn't because he put it on the hand with the ace bandage,
and it was loose.
And then it was loose, right? So messing with Polo. Polo's messing with the officer. The officer was kind of big, right? They going back and forth. He's furious. He walks back out. He comes back in with some snacks. He has, the chunky candy bar?
Yeah.
Polo says, "Oh, a chunky for a chunky, huh?"
Yeah.
So, okay.
Donuts and that. Between donuts and that.
tighten the cuffs so tight. It was ridiculous. So it's the worst. That's abuse. Mm-hmm. All right. So okay, what happens? Tightening the cuffs extremely tight. Due to his frustration, the officer starts hitting the young man. Keeping in mind, this officer has 20 years on the force and never had a reputation of or issue of abuse. You are one of the officers mm-hmm. at the scene of the abuse. What are you going to do?
Well, one, I'm going to tell him to stop. One, I'm going to interject, and that's another thing. I mean, it's one thing for you to sit there. There's certain things that warrant certain types of behavior. Mm-hmm. My game plan was, once the cuffs are on, it's over. I won the game already. It's over. There's no need to get into it. We could take it to what just recently happened to Officer stay on his brother's neck. That's not policing.
Definitely.
That's not policing at all. This brother physically couldn't get himself off the ground and do a flip unless he's Jackie Chan or something like this, some type of movie. Yeah, that's just not happening. He's proned out. It's over. Pick him up, put him in the car, whatever the case may be, and go about your goddamn business. It's not policing. The rules of engagement are different. And there's no need for that. There's no need for any of that type of stuff at all. That's when you're supposed to say, you're going a little too far. You step in, take whatever the case may be, and then you take over. That happens. People get caught up in the moment. It's police work is, you're human. It's a human thing. You get emotionally charged up. Somebody says something really stupid. Somebody says something smart. They come out their face. You may be coming into work with your own particular problems. You had an argument with your wife, kids, whatever the case may be. You're coming with all that. You as a partner, you're supposed to run that interference, take that scene over, and then go from there.
You tell him to stop. He does or doesn't. Do you report him?
It really depends on how bad this thing is. If I tell you to stop, you're stopping. And if I'm telling you to stop, that means that we're going to go all the way with it. So I never had to really worry about reporting, because if I said stop, that means stop. And that's the whole thing. You don't sit there and just sit there and watch that.
Definitely.
Because especially in today's, listen, this ain't like 1975. In today's time, everything's once recorded. Two, you don't know who's what, saying what. It's not worth the drama at the end of the goddamn day. No, you interject.
Okay. You are picked up for a crime that you didn't commit. Although you fit the description, you didn't do the crime. But you know the person who did the crime. Is it okay to inform the police, or is that considered snitching?
It goes back again.
Mind you, right? The person who did the crime know you're arrested for his crime.
No, but see, this is where it goes back again. It goes back to the whole situation of who is it? Because there's a lot of favoritism going on. Some people might not snitch on this dude because he might be that dude in the hood. So yeah, I might hold this for him. You know what I'm saying? Some people might sit there and be like, yo, listen, I'm locked up, bro. And send word to a dude, yo, listen, I need you to come down here and take this rap. Because if I got to go upstate for this, I might come home. It might not be nice. You know what I'm saying? It depends on who the person is. It depends on how loyal to the street this person that's getting cuffed is. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm the type of person that, forget the streets. I feel like God got me. So if I get locked up for something that I know I didn't do, I'm just waiting for that date to say not guilty so I can sue the state. That's all I'm waiting for now. You know what I'm saying? So me in particular, I'm not going to say nothing because I know that I didn't do anything. And whatever alibis or whatever I need to show that my case is authentic and everything that I'm saying is real, I'm going to utilize all of that. You know what I'm saying? And then I'll deal with Duke when I come home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Respect that. But I do know a situation like that and the person didn't come forward. Like he's basically saying, Rod.
Oh, no. My brother got caught up in something like that.
These are real situations, real scenarios. Okay, if you reach this far into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for further content. Let's change the course a little bit. In our last episode, we spoke about Kevin Samuels, and we gave a review on what men think about Kevin Samuels, despite what some women may think or women may feel about Kevin Samuels. I would like to hear from you two brothers as a part two to that discussion, what do you think about Kevin Samuels?
Well, I got turned on to Kevin Samuels like 2 to 3 years ago.
Okay.
And what, it's funny now, it was actually, it's great to see now his trajectory now, because he's part of the lexicon now where, everybody's talking about him, he's extremely popular on Instagram.
Definitely.
But I remember Kevin Samuels when he was all about men and men improvement. And what drew me to him was he said things like, listen, you should be working 60 hours a week. You should be getting some type of coaching. You should be working on your craft. Take a year off from dating. Work on yourself prior to you getting back. I mean, it's something that your uncle would tell you. For him, he's an image consultant. So he spoke about your image, suit Saturdays, why you should wear a suit. You have a lot of young men who don't like wearing suits or button-down shirts, etc., or shoes. And he went to great detail as far as what kind of shoes you should possibly get and, what fits your profile. And I thought it was extremely interesting. And then now what happened is that he found a business model to where women were coming into the room. I was there when it was only like 75 to 100 people watching the chat. Now there's 20,000 people watching because more women started coming into the space because they wanted to hear, what are these guys talking about? And then that's when he didn't coin the phrase high value man. He said this, his words, but he started using the term high value man. And what does that mean? And what's happening is that you have a group of men that men are able to talk through the internet and have real honest conversations about their experience with women. Kevin was a part of what's called the Black Manosphere. And the Black Manosphere is a collection of men from all over black men from all over the world that have various different experiences as far as being a man, and particularly in the dating arena. So your experience with a woman may be totally different from what I've experienced, but why are you getting that? So then you want to know. And then you're like, well, if I fix myself up, if I do this, if I do that, then maybe I can get the same type of interaction. And that's where it all starts, and that's where it kind of all started with. So I see now that it's much more, he's rating women. And listen, let's be very clear. Women are not used to being judged that harshly. Not even say harshly, honestly.
Yeah. Harshly honest.
Listen, as a man, I know what I can get. As far as what I can get as far as a woman's concerned. And really, it's really to the end of what you are financially. And we accept that. But if you tell a woman that he told one woman that she's like Emmett Smith, she weighs as much as Emmett Smith, and that you want a guy who's 6'5", he's making $300,000, $400,000 a year, then no. Because that man is going to have options to date who he wants to date. And that's just the situation. So, I mean, it started a conversation. I don't think it's more about him. I think it's more it started a conversation that needed to be had because, here you are, you have a black man that's speaking honestly. And he's speaking against the status quo, unlike a Steve Harvey that just says, hey, well, you know what, and this caterism that he does. And he's saying, no, we're not doing that. No, there's men there's black men that are doing well that are saying, hey, I want this. And I don't think a lot of women are used to hearing a man say, hey, I want this, and outside of sex.
I think human beings in general just don't like accountability. And I mentioned in the last video that he is an image consultant, so he gives the hard truth. Point blank, period. He gives the hard truth. A lot of times people don't want that. What do you think?
And that's the thing I respect about him the most. It's like he doesn't care about the stereotypes, what you think a female should hear. Like, he's the definition of what females claim they want. They want a man that's honest. They want a man that's open. They want a man that's going to keep it real with them at all times and keep them on their toes. So at the same time, I feel like he's rebirthing the sense of the black man when it comes to dealing with the women. Because a lot of black men, especially in the hood, we depend on the females. They the ones with the Section 8s. They the ones with the jobs. You know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of dudes be getting kicked out and end up homeless because they sit back and let the female do it. But that's a lion's mentality. You know what I'm saying? Like in the jungle, the lioness hunts and the male eats. So dudes is thinking they're that lion in the jungle when they letting a girl hunt. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's breaking down their self-respect, their self-esteem. Definitely. And I felt like him putting these females, I wouldn't say in a hot seat, but just being as honest that the next man can't be, really put the sight in the man, let them know, like, listen, you can still have the female you want, just be honest. And if that female can't respect that honesty, then that's not the female you need. You know what I'm saying? So I think he drew the line between wants and needs when it comes to females. If she can't respect how you feel and is not in agreement of what she want to hear or what she believes or how she feels, then she might not be that female for you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, like I mentioned in the previous video, like, you know, being an imam, being a chaplain, I deal hand in hand with marriage, divorce, counseling, and, you know, relationship issues. And I would tell any and every female possible, no matter what religion you are in, if you don't hold yourselves accountable, you're not going to have happiness. It's just impossible, right? So even if we said that Kevin Samuels was incorrect, even if you felt that, even if you felt he was incorrect, it's not your job to understand how men feel. It's your job to act accordingly or date otherwise. Because if we're looking for happiness, a man is telling you how he feels and you're telling him, no, you're not supposed to feel that way. It doesn't work that way, even if it's incorrect. If you love that individual, you work according to what that individual has to offer, or you find someone better. And I personally didn't like when I hear, say gay allegations, or he's gay, he's into women, he's not into men, he's not into women, he's bashing women and things like this. I didn't like that because technically, like in my religion, in order to make an accusation like that, you would have to see someone doing a particular action that deemed him to be this or that. Mm-hmm. If you didn't see that, you can't say that. And I think it's counterproductive to the actual message, because we sometimes when we don't want to hear what we're hearing, we look for something to attack and say, okay, now you got a reason to cut a person off. So what I did, I asked, some people in my community, well, what was the issues that you have with him? What are the issues that you have with him? And every single answer was emotional.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's because he triggered a lot of people, but it's funny because I hear things like, well, he goes hard on the women. I says, no, then go back 2 years ago to the old video. He keeps the old catalog up.
Definitely.
And he went just as hard on men. But you know what? It was okay. It's okay for men to get beat up because men are not going to complain about it. What did they do? A lot of those guys said, you know what, let me pick myself up and tighten it up and make myself better. And I mean, and that was the whole purpose of, the movement. He actually had a what was called like the men's conference where you had like 9 to 10 guys come down to Atlanta and they had a class and then they hung out and and went over some stuff. I mean, and it was all about improvement, self-improvement. Definitely. So like I say, I think now that he found a business model and he just kind of stumbled onto it. It wasn't like it was intentionally happened because women started coming to the space because they want the type of guys that he's around. Yeah. You had, like you said, he had the blue Henrys, which were blue-collar workers such as myself. Then you had white Henrys that, worked in corporate America, et cetera, that was professionals, i.e. lawyers, attorneys, and doctors. A lot of these men are like, listen, we're looking for somebody, but yet you're dealing with all this other minutia, and this is it. And he's telling you, hey, now this is what guys are looking for. Yes. But no one wants to listen to that because they just want to give you what they want to give you. And now you have black men in particular who are making it, who are making good money, X, Y, and Z, who have passports that are doing other things, saying, I'm gonna take my ball and go across the street. Or now they're going what's called MGTOW, men going their own way. They're not even dating. They take themselves totally out the dating pool now. You have that as well. Then you have another group called Save Yourself Black Man, where they say, hey, you know what? If I can't deal with this particular community, I'm gonna deal with that particular community. So these are a lot of these subcultures that happen because of the system in hand and because of marriage and divorce rapes and things of that nature. And that's all these type of roads lead to a guy like Kevin Samuels who just took all that and packaged it up and he's putting it out there now.
For sure, definitely. My advice to anyone who is uneasy with what he's saying, pay attention to the objective. Strong pay attention to the objective. If the objective is to have a happy home, then maybe you need to listen to what he's saying. If the objective is to date and you never get married and never have a long-term relationship or anything like that, then yeah, you can continue to do what you're doing, because I think this is what a lot of women are falling back on. The fact that they can still sleep around. Well, you telling me I need to do this, this, and this, but I still go home with a man every time I go to the club, or I still do this, or I still get that. But those people won't marry you. And if they will marry you, will you be happy? So I mentioned in the previous video, I pay attention to, as a teacher, I strongly pay attention to the message and not really the method. Because when you focus on the method, a person can use different methods and be productive. But when it comes to what's actually being said, that's what we judge. So
just real quick before you move on. And it's funny because
I think saying you don't have it. Yeah. Okay.
It's funny to me when it comes to female calling men emotional. Mm-hmm. I recently dated a girl that sat there and was like, "Yo, bro, every time you got a problem with something, you ain't got to say something. Like, you too emotional."
Told you that?
Told me that.
Got it. Wow.
So I'm sitting and I'm looking at her like, when I was that other type of person, this is the type of person females was asking me to be. Listen, you don't have to curse me out and go all crazy or go cheat on me. Just sit down and talk to me. Tell me how you feel. And I sit down and tell a female how I feel. She feel like I'm emotional. So when people sit there and say that a man is emotional for expressing how he feels, it's like, do you want him to express this verbally or you want him to express this physically? Like, how you want him to do it? Because if he expresses physically, then he's crazy. But if he expresses it verbally, he's emotional. Like, what type of man do you want to deal with? So I just find that funny because a lot of females say dudes is emotional. Even on social media, these dudes is emotional. But it's like, what do you want? You want a dude that's going to show emotion, or you going to want a dude that's going to act like he don't care? Like, you know what I'm saying? I just don't get it sometimes. It'd be a catch.
Well, people are creatures of habit. So sometimes, you ever heard of a situation where a woman says, he doesn't love me unless he hits me? Yeah. That's a real thing. It's a real thing, So I think what happens is everyone's measuring tool on love varies. It varies. But ultimately, you don't hold yourself accountable to how they want you to love them. You hold yourself accountable on how you're taught to love. That's all you can do.
They need counseling.
Yeah, definitely.
When Kevin says that, do you have counseling? Oh, why do I need counseling? Well, obviously you got your own way. I mean, and it seems like as if it's a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with counseling. If you're saying things like, they hit me, love me, all this other stuff, I mean, that's just abuse. Yeah. And that's dysfunction at its best.
But that's what I'm saying. Some people became accustomed to dysfunction.
Extremely.
But see, they became accustomed to that, and it's accepted and it's second nature because this is what they grew up seeing.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Or a female done went through a situation where she was sexually abused. You know what I'm saying? So the way they got their innocence taken from them and the way they was treated, all the things they seen around them, they sitting there thinking that, okay, well, I see daddy beat mom. She say daddy loves her after he beats her. Don't worry about what me and daddy goes through. He hits me, but he still loves me. So they grow up like, okay, even if a man hits me, he loves me. If he don't hit me, then he don't care. Definitely. So it's always about how these people was taught. You can never get mad at the student. You always got to get mad at the teacher. You know what I'm saying? And that's just what it is.
In addition to the information I gave before, prior to keep in contact with us, any type of relationship advice, suggestions, questions can be forwarded to confrontational4@gmail.com. So let's go into the movie review of the week. The movie was All Day and a Night. Particularly for my culture and my community, the movie was kind of it was intense. It was an intense movie. But the reason why we chose this movie is because the movie was real. The movie was a movie where it depicted a lot of what goes on in our community. It was written and directed by Joe Robert Cole, produced by Nina Jacobson, and the lead roles were played by Ashton Sander as Jacor Abraham, Jeffrey Wright as James Daniel JD, and Isaiah John. Each of these actors did a terrific job in this movie. What do you guys think about the movie?
Extremely depressing. But no,
but why was it depressing?
No, I mean, you know what it is. It's just to see that life cycle. Mm-hmm. You know, here you had a young man that did not have a father figure in the house. I mean, his father was in the house, but he really wasn't. Yeah. He treated him more like just like a homeboy, if anything. You know, he was being overly beaten, abused. We can honestly say that.
But why?
Well, because he let someone take his toy.
Yeah.
You know, at school, and you can only sympathize in a sense where you go, well, you know what, this is, you know, growing up in obviously in East Oakland during that time. That was the standard. Like, you know, you had to fight for yours. And he was basically teaching him a lesson. Like, hey, listen, and I heard this before. My father told me this. Listen, either you deal with it outside or you have to deal with me. Yeah. Like, you know, so I
East Oakland, Queensbridge.
I
losing twice.
Yeah, like I heard that. And you know what? When you're growing up in that type of environment, that's just what it is. You have to, because your parents are not going to be with you every day. You're going to have to fight, even if you don't want to. And it's just like, but for me, it's just like at this particular point in my life, I'm just like, oh my God, man, it's just like too much, man. It's just like, then, you know, you commit this act, you kill two people, and now you just have a newborn that you didn't even get the chance to see yet. It was just like like those chain of events. And how many times we heard that, sort of seen that story personally. Definitely. Around the way, where people locked down and being a father on the inside, which is extremely difficult. Yeah. I don't care how many visits, how many letters, whatever. It's extremely difficult to do something like that. Yeah. It's next to impossible. I mean, he had an epiphany towards the end, obviously, but still, it's just like, did it take that?
Which was funny, because I don't think a lot of people pay attention to the fact that you don't have many chances to make mistakes and get your life back. There's some mistakes that you can make and life goes on with or without you, but you escaped death, you escaped life in prison. And then there's some mistakes that you may make and you're extremely regretful, but it doesn't matter. You still got to do 25 years to life. You still got to do 50 years to life. You still, you know, ended up getting shot or killed because of those actions. And as sad as people was at the end of the movie, hoping and wishing it would have went a different way, it didn't.
That's the reality of it. I mean, that's not Hollywood.
That's not Hollywood.
Yeah, that's not Hollywood. That's not Hollywood.
Yeah, and that's why I chose that movie.
That's not Hollywood.
Actually, you know, I had a stepfather. My father, I had a stepfather. You know, Mike. He was around, and he did his best. But besides me having a stepfather, while being growing up, I was like, this is my life. I aspiring rapper, caught up in the streets. Alhamdulillah, I changed my life. Oh, praise to God, I changed my life. But what if I didn't? What if I would have been that person who made that mistake and couldn't get it right? Then I got to live the rest of my life behind bars, which is crazy.
I mean, at the same time, nobody's life goes to waste. This is something that I learned.
That's true.
In going through life, is something that I learned that if a person walks out at 3:00 in the morning and makes a mistake and gets shot in the head, or hit by a car, whatever might happen, that situation right there is a sign and a cue to somebody else that might be around the person, that might be around the people that's around that person. They might just hear the story, and that might make them adjust their life. Definitely. I'm saying, because every action is a reaction.
Yes.
I'm saying, so a lot of people, all this shooting going on in the hood, yeah, his lives being taken, but them lives being taken, people that's sitting back observing it is making adjustments with the way they dealing with their kids and what they deal with people in life. So eventually it's going to come full circle. It's just, how many, 8 billion people in the world? It's going to take a long time to go full circle.
Yeah. Well, as a Muslim, we believe that nothing happens by mistake. Exactly. Everything is divine decree, and we don't attribute anything evil to God. So if something evil happens, then it's by way of your hands or by way of someone else's hands, who you're just a product of his evil action. But there's a lesson to be learned in everything. Mm-hmm. So yes, like you mentioned, all of those gunshots, and that's being people shooting and the likes of this, which is terrible, and people losing lives, people being injured and harmed. But then there's someone saying, you know what, I don't want this kind of lifestyle for myself. The lesson, fully explained, and it fully expressed. The person says, you know what, this is not how I want to end my life. I don't want to have 80 years or 75 years living around gunfire and danger. No, trauma. People change, and I think that's part of the benefit of what we get from.
But it inspires too.
Definitely. So let me ask you guys real quick. First of all, if I choose a movie, I think it has potential to be an excellent movie. On a scale from 1 to 5, what do you rate the movie? 5 being the best.
Well, I'll rate it a 4. I don't want to rate it a 5.
For me, it would be a 3.
A 3.
For me, it would be a 3.
A 3 is kind of why?
It's in the middle. I don't. It's in the middle. I didn't say 2.
It's good. I got you. No problem.
It's in the middle. Like I said, for outside of the message, I mean the acting. I mean, I love Jeffrey Wright. Like, 'cause I seen Jeffrey Wright in play form, when I was 19 years old. My first play, which was I went to go see Top Dog Underdog with him and Mos Def. I mean, he's phenomenal actor.
Yes.
You had the other brother, the African brother that played Stunner. He's played in a lot of stuff as of late as well. I've been seeing him coming along. He played in the Get Down, actually.
17, I think his name is.
Yeah. Really, I mean, and you had the younger brother that played his son, Jeffrey Wright's son. Mm-hmm. I mean, phenomenal acting, hands down. For me, the messaging.
Yeah, Ashton Sanders.
That's the brother's name. Yeah, for me, it's the messaging, and I can watch Boys in the Hood. Like, if Boys in the Hood comes on, I can sit and watch it. Mm. And the reason why I can sit and watch it, because it takes me back to a certain time and place in my life where that's what I could watch Men's Society.
Yeah. Because
it takes me back. But watching those particular types of movies now, it just does something to me as an adult. I'm just like,
See, the funny thing about this movie was it actually gave me Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood vibes. But and I think the reality of it, it was so realistic that I think it did its job in having me tap into understanding a life that everybody won't understand, right? So I was like, okay, I think I actually gave it like a 4.5.
That's what I said. I give it a 4.
And the reason why I didn't give it that whole 5 is because some of the actors could have been better. Like, they had the Malcolm's mother, who in the courthouse. I think she overdid it a little bit. It didn't seem as all too authentic. But I understood the sentiment. I understood the growing up and wanting to have your father there, but he's addicted to drugs, so you don't really have your father there, and he gets taken away from you. Now you're trying to do everything to be not like him. Like, even if I think it was in episode 1 or 2, I mentioned how even in my days in the street, I didn't want to sell drugs because my mother was on drugs. So even when I did sell drugs, it's like, this ain't for me. I did other stuff, but this ain't for me because. So I understood his sentiment, and he didn't want to sell drugs because his father was on drugs. And then what really took it over the edge was how he couldn't tell anybody why he killed the actor.
Yeah, I thought that.
Why he killed Malcolm. And I understood 100% how he had a vendetta against this person who sold drugs to his father, and ultimately why his father died. I mean, why his father got arrested and put in jail. So it was like so realistic to me that I didn't expect it to be that realistic from actors who weren't considered like top tier.
Yeah, B rated.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like if Denzel Washington or someone like that played in that part, the movie, I was like, okay, it's an excellent movie. The acting is great, but it's not realistic. They made it feel realistic to the point where I was like, yo.
Well,
talk about this.
And like I said, I think Jeffrey Wright carried it. I mean, I think he carried it. I mean, because he's a great character actor. I mean, you know, he had people thought he was Dominican for the longest time when he played in Shaft. Yeah. I mean, he played Peoples. I mean, like, yeah, he has that type of range.
Yes,
and that's what kind of took it over the top for me. I was like, okay, all right, no problem. You know,
so
I mean, the part of the movie for me was the whole. For me, you know what I'm saying, like, the guns, the drugs, the killing. I get it. You know what I'm saying, but the part that reached out to me, that made me look at it as a movie that is different and heartfelt, is when he seen his baby on the visiting floor. That was the thing for me, because I got 5 kids, and out of all 5 of my kids, I missed 4 births. So not seeing that kid and then seeing it for the first time on the visiting floor is like,
you understood it.
It's like, damn, like that was the low high point for me in the movie. You know what I'm saying? It was the lowest, but it showed.
It resonated.
You know what I'm saying? It gave people an understanding, like, regardless what you're doing out here, look at this now. Now, did everything you do out there really matter when you're sitting there looking at this kid in this predicament? And that's what it be. A lot of dudes do things and then think about it in the hindsight. But if you look at your kid before you walk out that door and do something dumb, you know what I'm saying? Or you look at another kid and just think about your kid, it might stop you from doing a lot.
With that, I would like to say thank you for tapping into the 4th episode of the Confrontational Podcast. Continue to follow, like, comment, and share. And remember, your comments actually mean a lot. So comment,